They say the wind in the Red Hills carries more than dust. It carries memories of men who thought they could bury what they did. I came here to test that theory to see if the wind could bury me too. For 2 years I'd kept mostly to myself, patching fences, mending tack, speaking to no one but my horse and the morning. When a man's seen too much blood, words start to taste like iron. Silence is easier to chew. That morning, the sky looked clean, too clean, a hard blue, the kind that turns men's tempers dry. I was riding the ridge north of the Sweetwater Basin, taking the long way around, keeping my mind on small things, fence posts, cloud shapes, the color of sage and wind. My gelding, Bramble, picked his way careful down a wash that smelled of old rain. And that's when I saw the cottonwood. It stood alone by the creek, half its roots hanging in air where the bank had caved years ago. A rope swung from one of its branches, heavy and still. For a second, I thought it was some rancher's idea of a scarecrow. Then the wind shifted, and I saw her. She hung there, a woman limp as a prayer gone unanswered. Her hair, black and long, tangled around the branch. I felt my stomach drop clean out of me. I don't remember stepping off the horse. One moment I was in the saddle, the next my boots were in the sand, knife out, heart pounding loud enough to wake the dead. The noose had bitten deep. Whoever tied it hadn't wasted time making it neat. Her feet brushed the ground, not far to fall, but far enough. I cut the rope just above the knot. The weight dropped into my arms like a child asleep. She was light, frighteningly light. I laid her down on the dry grass, my own breath running wild. Her face was gray under the dirt, lips tinged blue. An Arapaho woman, I could tell by the beadwork still clinging to her torn dress. Whoever did this didn't care who she was, only what she wasn't. I pressed my fingers to her throat. Nothing. Then again a flutter, weak, stubborn. She wasn't gone yet. "Stay with me," I said. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone better than me. I worked the noose loose, massaged the life back into her neck, the way an old army medic once taught me. Her chest hitched, then stilled. I poured a trickle of water between her lips. She coughed once, sharp and ugly, but it was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. Her eyes opened halfway, black as obsidian and just as unreadable. She tried to speak. No sound came out. "Easy," I said, wiping the sweat from her temple. "You're safe now." The lie tasted bitter. Nobody's safe out here. The ground around us told the rest of the story. I saw 4 sets of boot tracks, one missing a spur. Wagon ruts cut into the dust, then veered off west. I found a chaw tin, still half full, smelled of wintergreen. Cheap kind. I could almost hear them laughing as they rode away. Bounty riders, maybe. Vigilantes, more likely. The kind of men who think justice comes faster on a rope than in a court. I'd met their kind before, and once, long ago, I'd been one of them. I looked back at her. She was shivering, though the sun was merciless. Her breath came in shallow drags, like she was afraid to use too much of it. The skin around her throat was angry red, bruised like a storm cloud. I took off my coat, wrapped it around her shoulders, and talked just to keep her anchored. "You're gonna make it," I said. "You hear me? You didn't come this far to quit." She blinked slow, deliberate, maybe an answer, maybe not. Either way, it was enough. Bramble snorted behind me. The gelding never liked ghosts, and the way he pawed the ground told me we weren't alone. I scanned the ridgeline, nothing but heat shimmer. Still, I knew better than to bet on nothing. Men who hang a woman don't always ride far. I hooked my arm under her knees and lifted her easy as I could. She didn't weigh half what she should have. I put her across the saddle, her head resting against my shoulder, then mounted behind her. The wind carried the rope I'd cut, whipping it against the branch. I tied the piece of it to my saddle horn, a reminder, a vow. The ride home took hours. The basin lay wide and silent, the kind of silence that listens. The smell of dust mixed with blood and smoke, ghosts of campfires long gone cold. She drifted in and out, once mumbling a word that sounded like Ayana. I repeated it softly, to keep her tethered. "Ayana," I said. "All right, Ayana, you just keep breathing." By the time we reached the cabin, my arms were trembling from holding her steady. I carried her inside. The place smelled of old wood and solitude, and laid her near the hearth. The air was cool, shadows long. I stoked the fire till it woke up angry, then fetched water from the barrel. When I came back, she was halfway between sleep and fever, whispering in a language I didn't know but somehow trusted. I cleaned the dirt from her face, careful around the bruising. The rope mark looked like the outline of a hand that refused to let go. I wrapped her neck with a strip torn from an old shirt, then brewed tea from willow bark and mint. The first time I tried to give her some, she turned her head away. The second time, she drank. Just a little, but enough. She looked at me then, really looked as if measuring what kind of danger I was. There's a certain silence between two people who both survived something. I'd seen it before on battlefields, in saloons after closing, in the mirror most mornings. It isn't fear, it's recognition. My name's Elias, I told her. Elias Cooper. You're in my cabin out by the Sweetwater Rim. You're safe here. Her lips moved. The sound barely crossed the firelight. Safe is a word men use, she whispered. That stopped me cold. She wasn't wrong. I sat back on my heels, nodded once. Then let's use a better one, I said. You're free. You stay because you choose to, and you leave when you choose. That's all the promise I can give. She studied me a while, eyes flicking from my hands to my face. Then, to my surprise, she nodded once, like a warrior accepting terms. I handed her the tin cup again, and she drank longer this time. Progress. Outside, night was coming on hard. Coyotes began their song thin, lonely, like they were arguing with God. I moved my chair near the door, rifle resting across my knees. Habit. The fire threw long shadows, painting her skin in gold and coal. Every now and then she stirred, muttering words that might have been prayers or curses. I couldn't tell the difference, and maybe it didn't matter. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept thinking of that tree, the way it stood there indifferent, roots half out of the ground, holding its shape while men used it to hang another human being. The West calls itself free, but I've learned freedom's just a word men hide behind, same as safe. Out here, freedom's only real if you make it so for someone else too. Sometime past midnight, she woke crying without sound. I got up, added a log to the fire, didn't speak. Talking to grief's like shouting into a canyon, the echo just comes back sadder. She met my eyes and held them. For the first time, I saw fear there, not of me, of memory. I poured her more water. Her hand brushed mine, light as moth wings. Then she drifted back under. The rest of the night stretched long. I watched the embers die down to coals, thought about the men who did this, what they'd say if caught. She stole something. She lied. She fought back. Always the same script. Out here, a lie on a man's tongue can weigh more than a woman's life. Maybe it wasn't my fight, but then again, maybe it always had been. When dawn broke, it came without color. Just pale light filtering through smoke and sleep. I stepped outside, stretched my back, breathed the chill. The sky smelled of rain that wouldn't come. Bramble nickered softly. I rubbed his nose and promised him oats later. The world was still, too still. Inside, the fire had gone to ash. She was awake, sitting up slow, wrapped in my coat. Her eyes found mine, sharper than before. She touched her throat, winced, then managed water. I poured some from the kettle, cooled it with what little was left in the canteen. She drank steady, then nodded, as if approving the work. Her next words came rough, like gravel learning to speak. And knife. I looked at her, measured the steadiness in her gaze. I took my hunting knife from the table and set it on the floor between us, hilt toward her. There, I said. Ain't much good without a hand to use it, but it's yours if you want it. She didn't reach for it. She just looked at me for a long time, so long I almost reached for my hat out of habit. Finally she said, "You cut me down." I did. Her eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "Then maybe the wind remembers you kindly." This. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and poured myself some coffee gone bitter with age. Outside, the sun climbed higher, turning the land from gray to gold. She leaned back against the log wall, closed her eyes, and exhaled slow, like someone learning how to own her breath again. For the first time since I'd seen her, she looked alive. Maybe that's all redemption ever is, helping someone else breathe when you'd already forgotten how. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. The next morning, the sky looked wrong too, still, like the land was holding its breath. Around here, stillness is just the world loading a gun. I'd lived long enough in these hills to know when weather meant business, and by the smell of iron in the air, a sandstorm was coming. Out on the high plains, storms don't politely ask to come in. They break down the door. I patched the shutters, set extra water inside, and filled the cracks under the door with rags. The woman Ayana watched me work without saying much. She sat wrapped in a blanket near the fire, hands steady now, eyes clearer than yesterday. Every so often she'd glance toward the knife still resting on the floor where I'd left it, like she wanted to make sure it stayed real. "You ever seen a storm out here?" I asked her. "I've seen the sky eat the ground," she said, "and men think it's God coming for them." "Close enough," I said, and she almost smiled. When the wind arrived, it came low and mean, crawling under the eaves, dragging half the desert with it. The sound filled the cabin like a train that never stops. Dust slipped through the seams, painting the air brown. I threw another log on the fire, then looked her way. She'd moved to the table, sorting through a small bundle of herbs she carried in a deerhide pouch. Fingers sure, movements careful. The way she handled those leaves told me she'd done this 100 times. Healing was part of her blood. "What's that you've got?" I asked, raising my voice over the storm. "Yarrow, sage, and mountain mint," she said. "They help with fever. The throat needs rest." "Guess you'd know." I nodded toward her bandaged neck. She gave a small shrug, then looked at me for a long moment. "You saved me," she said quietly. "But you don't ask why I was there." "Oh?" "I figure you'll tell me when you want to," I said. She studied me again, like a person weighing a horse she might ride but isn't sure of yet. Then she said, "3 men caught me by the river. They said I carried messages between camps, said I was stealing secrets from white men's soldiers. Lies. I carried medicine, letters, sometimes coins from wives to their husbands in town. That's all. Some men don't need truth," I said, "just an excuse." Her eyes darkened. "They wore badges," she said. That hit like a hammer I'd dropped before. I'd seen badges used as permission slips for cruelty. "Not the sheriff's men," I said. She shook her head. "Private ones. They said the law paid for information. I was the information." Outside, the wind howled harder. The sound crawled up my spine like cold water. I busied myself with the stove, cooking beans and salt pork, just to have something human in the room. She watched the firelight play across the kettle. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was alive, like something growing roots. When the food was ready, I set 2 tin plates on the table. "Eat what you can," I said. She took one bite, then another. After a while she said, "Why did you cut me down?" I thought about that. "Didn't seem right leaving you hanging there." "That's not an answer," she said softly. "No," I admitted. "It's the only one I've got." She gave a sound somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. "The wind remembers kindness," she murmured again. I let that settle while thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was shifting, heavier now, carrying small stones that clicked against the roof. Bramble whinnied out in the shed, nervous. I opened the door between gusts and went to calm him. When I came back in, Ayana was standing at the window, watching the world disappear behind a curtain of red dust. "Storm's angry," I said. "Maybe the earth is just cleaning itself," she said. "Men leave too much dirt behind." Couldn't argue with that. We passed the afternoon trading silence for small talk. She told me she was born near Wind River, said her mother was Arapaho and her father the kind of white man who disappears before a child remembers his face. I told her I'd been a Union scout during the war, that afterward I'd worked cattle till I couldn't stand the smell of other men's tempers. We both understood what it meant to start over and still carry the weight you meant to leave behind. As the wind eased near sundown, I took my rifle and went outside to check the horizon. Fresh tracks by the fence, 2 horses, shod, traveling light. They'd come close, too close. I could tell by the pattern one rider had a limp or a bad stirrup. Could have been coincidence, but I don't believe in that word. I followed the prints 50 yards, then lost them in the drifts. When I came back, Ayanna was waiting in the doorway, shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. "Men came," she said, reading my face. "Close enough to smell the dust off my barn," I said. "Probably the same ones." She nodded, calm but not careless. "Then they'll come again. They'll want to finish what they started." "Maybe," I said. "But next time I'll be ready." She stepped aside to let me in. "And me?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked. "You're not a prisoner," I said, "but if you stay, you fight beside me." Her chin lifted, proud and sharp. "I've fought before. I figured as much." We spent the rest of the evening preparing in silence. I cleaned my rifle, checked cartridges, fixed a broken hinge on the door. She gathered herbs, ground them into powder, and mixed them with tallow from a tin. When I asked what for, she said, "Smoke signal, not for calling help for blinding eyes." That made me smile. I liked the way her mind worked. After the work was done, she moved to the fire and began humming low, something that sounded older than either of us. It wasn't a song I knew, but it fit the rhythm of wind and flame. Without thinking, I joined in just a hum, a deep note under hers, 2 sounds meeting in the dark. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "The song is for staying alive." "I'll keep it in mind," I said. When we turned in, she took the small bedroom at the back, the one my sister had used before Denver took her east. I laid my bedroll by the door again. Habit. The night stretched long and quiet except for the soft pulse of wind and the occasional crack from the fire. I didn't sleep much. My thoughts ran circles around the same question. What kind of men hang a woman and ride off laughing? Before dawn, I stepped outside. The world looked scrubbed raw, all colors muted under a pale gray sky. I walked the fence line again, then came back to find Ayanna already up, grinding coffee in the mortar with the same calm precision she used for medicine. "You sleep?" I asked. "Enough to dream," she said. "Enough to remember." "What did you remember?" "That the wind doesn't stop just because men think it should." I poured hot water over the grounds, watched the steam rise. "I used to think peace meant being alone," I said. "Lately I'm not so sure." She handed me a small leather bundle. "Keep this with you. If your heart beats too fast, chew it." "What is it?" "Willow and cedar," she said. "For fear." "I thought you didn't believe in fear." "I believe in balance," she said. "Even mountains tremble." I slipped the bundle into my pocket. Fair enough. By midday, I saw movement across the basin, 2 riders, same as before, heading east toward the trail to Sweetwater Flats. They weren't sneaking now. That told me they had a plan. Maybe they wanted to flush us out, make me bring her into town where they could finish the job under the banner of law. Either way, we needed the sheriff before they twisted the story. "We'll ride to Sweetwater," I said. "Sheriff Talcott's an honest man, if you're willing." Her eyes narrowed. "And if I'm not? Then I'll find another way," I said. "But truth dies faster if we hide it." She stared out the window for a long time, then nodded once. "We go, but not as hunted people. We go as the ones who lived." I liked that. "You can ride?" She gave me a look sharp enough to cut rope. "I rode before you ever built fences." So we saddled Bramble and my old pack horse, Jasper. She mounted slow but steady, the wind tugging at her hair like it was trying to keep her here. We rode out together, the 2 of us small against the wide basin, heading toward a town that had its own ghosts. Sweetwater Flats looked the same as ever, one dusty street, 2 saloons, a church steeple that leaned like it was tired of pretending. Folks turned to stare when we rode in. A white man and an Arapaho woman don't pass unnoticed in 1878 Wyoming. I ignored the stares, reined up in front of the sheriff's office, and helped her down. Sheriff Brody Talcott was already standing in the doorway. Big man, slow smile, gray in his beard. He'd fought beside me in the war, which meant he'd seen me both shoot straight and drink crooked, but he was one of the few I still called decent. "Elias," he said. "Morning. Who's your friend?" "Ayanna," I said. "She's the one they tried to hang out by the cottonwood." His face changed. "Lord Almighty, You sure? I cut her down myself. 3 men, maybe 4. Private badges, wintergreen chaw, 1 broken spur. He sighed. I know the type. Boys from the McCready outfit. Think God handed them justice with their pay stub. He looked at Ayanna and tipped his hat, respectful. Ma'am, I'm sorry for what you've been through. She met his eyes level. Sorry doesn't fix the rope, she said. No, ma'am, he said. But I can fix the men. He told us to come back the next day, high noon, when he'd have the suspects rounded up at the stockyards. Said he wanted witnesses, a public setting so no one can twist the truth. I knew his plan, daylight justice, the only kind that lasts. We left the office and stopped by the general store for supplies. People parted around us like water around a rock. Some looked away, some looked too long. Sweetwater had always been a town of half-buried decency. It wanted to be good but didn't know how without permission. When we reached the edge of town, Ayanna turned to me. You trust this man? I do, I said. He's as straight as a post in new ground. She nodded. Then we'll stand beside him. We rode back slow, the sun dropping low behind the buttes. The land stretched wide and gold around us, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside, like the ground finally letting go of a storm. At the cabin, she dismounted and handed me the reins. Tomorrow decides much, she said. Maybe not, I answered. Maybe tomorrow just shows who we are. She looked at me, eyes steady. Then let's be seen. 0. I watched her walk inside, strong despite the bruises, her steps sure. The wind had quieted, leaving only the faint rustle of cottonwood leaves. I thought of the rope tied to my saddle horn, now hanging by the door. I touched it once, rough, heavy, real, not as a trophy, as a reminder that some debts you pay by living better than you did the day before. I poured 2 cups of coffee and set one on the table across from mine. She joined me, no words, just the small sound of mugs meeting wood. The fire crackled, steady. Outside, the world held its breath again, waiting for dawn. If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from so I don't feel so alone out here. Morning broke sharp and silver, the kind that makes every nail in the cabin pop like it's waking from a bad dream. The light came through the cracks first, narrow and cold, then widened across the floorboards until it reached her face. Ayanna was already awake, sitting cross-legged near the fire, grinding herbs between 2 flat stones. The smell of sage and cedar filled the air, clean, ancient, a smell older than sin. You're up early, I said. She didn't look up. The body wakes when it remembers danger. I poured water into the kettle and set it over the fire. You'll need strength today. We both will. She gave a small nod, but her eyes stayed on the herbs. The light hit her cheekbone, and for the first time, I noticed the scar there, faint, like lightning on distant hills. I wanted to ask, but some stories aren't for mornings. I packed my rifle, checked the cartridges twice. Habit. The kind of habit that keeps a man breathing. When I glanced back, she was wrapping the herbs into small cloth bundles, tying them with rawhide. For wounds, she said when she caught my look, in case the day asks for blood. Let's hope it doesn't, I said. Hope is good, she replied, but I trust hands more. We saddled the horses in silence. The sun was still low, pale as an old coin. She mounted without help this time, back straight, eyes scanning the horizon. Whatever fear she'd carried had been burned down into something sharper, resolve. I'd seen that look before in soldiers, before the charge, in mothers who'd lost too much already. It's the kind of calm that makes violent men hesitate. The ride to Sweetwater Flats took near 2 hours. The land stretched wide and empty, except for the wind whispering over sage and the sound of our horses' hooves marking time. Neither of us spoke much. There wasn't anything left to say. Sometimes quiet feels heavier than words. Sometimes it's the only way 2 people can share space without breaking it. Halfway there, we stopped by a small creek to water the horses. She knelt and washed her hands, then touched the water to her throat, whispering something in Arapaho. The sound carried like smoke. I didn't ask what it meant. Out here, prayer doesn't always belong to churches. When she stood, I handed her a small bundle wrapped in canvas. Inside was a Winchester rifle, oiled and balanced. "You'll carry this," I said. "If anything goes wrong, don't wait on me." She ran her fingers along the barrel, eyes narrowing with the kind of respect only people who've known loss give to a weapon. "It's lighter than I thought," she said. "Won't matter," I said. "You'll still feel the weight." She nodded once. That was enough. By the time we reached the edge of town, the clock over Talcott's office was ticking toward noon. The sun hung straight overhead, merciless and honest. That's the thing about high noon, it gives no man a shadow to hide behind. The street was quiet, too quiet. Windows half open, curtains moving just enough to tell me we were being watched. Even the wind seemed to wait. Sheriff Talcott stood near the stockyards, hat low, badge glinting like a stubborn star. 2 deputies flanked him. Both men I trusted enough to watch my back, but not enough to turn it. Ayanna dismounted first, shoulders squared, face unreadable. I followed, rifle slung across my chest, but not drawn. You don't come to justice looking ready to shoot, even if you know that's how it'll end. Brody saw us coming and stepped forward. "Elias," he said, voice steady as fence wire. "Glad you made it. Folks are gathering. You sure about this?" "As sure as I ever am," I said. His eyes moved to Ayanna. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "you understand what's about to happen." She nodded. "They'll come. They always do when they think the wind's in their favor." The sheriff sighed. "Then we'll make sure it changes direction." By the time the first riders appeared, a crowd had started forming ranch hands, shopkeepers, a few miners fresh from the hills, all pretending they just happened to be passing by. Nobody likes trouble, but everyone wants to see it. There were 4 of them, same as the tracks I'd seen by my fence. They rode slow, trying to look casual, like men who'd spent their lives lying to themselves. The one in front, big man, drooping mustache, wintergreen chaw in his cheek, tipped his hat toward Talcott. "Heard you wanted to talk, Sheriff." "I do," Brody said. "We're looking into a hanging out by the Red Hills. Rope, cottonwood, 1 survivor." Wintergreen spat, dark and slow. "You mean the squaw?" The word hit the air like a slap. Ayanna didn't flinch. "She's got a name," I said, stepping forward. "Say it right." He grinned, showing the kind of teeth that drink rotgut and lies. "Don't reckon I need lessons in manners from a man who keeps company with his own livestock." The crowd murmured, half laughter, half shame. Brody's voice cut through it. "That's enough, Pike. You know the law same as I do. You'll answer for what you did." Pike smirked. "We did the territory a favor, Sheriff. These people bring trouble, you know that. We just cleaned it up before it got messy." "Messy is what you're in now," I said, hand resting easy near my belt. He noticed. "Careful, cowboy," he said, still smiling. "You point that gun at me, and the law's gonna side with its own." "That depends on who's left standing," I said. Talcott stepped between us. "We'll settle this proper. You and your boys dismount. Lay your irons on the barrel." Pike laughed. "You got no proof, Sheriff. Just the word of a—" Before he could finish, Ayanna stepped forward. Her voice came low but carried clear. "Proof enough." From her satchel, she pulled the rope, the same one I'd cut, still stained, still knotted at the end. She threw it at Pike's feet. "You tie that knot," she said. "Left-handed, backward. Same as you do your horse tack. Same as the tracks by his fence." He stared at her, then at me, realizing too late the trap had already sprung. His left hand twitched toward his belt. I moved before he did. My rifle came up, leveled at his chest. "Don't," I said. "But pride is louder than wisdom." He drew. My shot came half a breath sooner. The bullet hit the revolver clean, sending it spinning out of his hand and knocking his hat into the dirt. The sound cracked the day wide open. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the other 3 men froze, hands halfway to their holsters, seeing that their leader's gun lay twisted on the ground. Brody's deputies stepped forward, quick and sure. "Drop 'em," the sheriff ordered. "Now." Steel hit dirt in 3 dull thuds. The crowd exhaled all at once, a human wind. Brody picked up the rope, held it high. "This is evidence," he said. "You 4 are under arrest for attempted murder and unlawful lynching." One of the men, the youngest, looked ready to argue. Brody's hand dropped to his Colt, and that ended it. Pike stared at me, his good hand shaking. "You think this changes anything?" he said. "You can't wash out the blood between your kind and hers." I holstered my rifle. "Ain't trying to wash it," I said. "Just stopping it from spreading." Brody marched them off under guard. The crowd followed, hungry for justice or gossip, didn't matter which. When the street finally cleared, it was just me and Ayanna standing in the dust. She turned to me, her face unreadable. "You shot his hat," she said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I was feeling merciful," I said. "Hat didn't deserve to die." That almost got a laugh out of her. Almost. We walked back to the horses. The sky had softened to a bruised blue, the kind that comes after hard truth. She paused by Bramble, running her hand down his neck. "What happens now?" "Brody'll hold them till the judge comes through," I said. "Word'll spread. Maybe folks will think twice before they tie another rope." "Maybe," she said, "but the wind doesn't change just because men say sorry." "No," I said, "but sometimes it slows." We rode out of town quiet, dust trailing behind us like smoke from a fire that finally went out. The basin opened ahead, endless and gold. Somewhere between the sun and the earth, a peace I hadn't felt in years started to find me. Halfway home, we stopped by the cottonwood. The rope scar still cut across the branch, frayed and ugly. She dismounted, walked to it, and placed her hand against the bark. For a long time she didn't speak. Finally she said, "A tree remembers pain the way a body does. It grows around it." I nodded. "Then maybe we can do the same." She turned to me, eyes steady, wind pulling at her hair. "Why do you help me, Elias Cooper?" I didn't answer right away. The truth's a thing that needs air. "Because once, a man pulled me out of a ditch after a battle I should have died in. I asked him why. He said, 'Because I could.' That's all. I figure it's a good enough reason to keep passing on." She studied me for a long time, then said softly, "Then maybe the wind remembers you after all." When we got back to the cabin, I unsaddled the horses while she went inside to make tea. The sun dropped low, setting the world on fire. I watched her silhouette through the window, the way she moved, steady and sure, as if the house already knew her. Inside, she handed me a cup, her fingers brushing mine. "Tomorrow," she said, "the men will talk about what they saw. Some will call it justice, some will call it luck. Which do you believe in?" "Neither," I said. "I believe in work. Justice and luck are just words men use when they don't want to get their hands dirty." She smiled faintly. "Then we worked." Himself. We drank in silence, listening to the creek beyond the hill and the coyotes starting up again. I thought of the rope hanging by my door, the scar on her neck, the long road between right and wrong that had no signposts worth trusting. But I also thought of her laughter, brief as it was, and how the sound made the cabin feel like a home again. When she rose to bank the fire, she glanced at me once more. "You'll sleep now?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "You?" "I'll dream of rivers," she said. "They never hang anyone." She disappeared into the back room. I sat a while longer, listening to the wind move through the cottonwoods. It sounded like forgiveness learning to speak. And somewhere in that long, whispering dark, I realized I didn't feel alone anymore. "Hey there, friend, take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. Your body will thank you." It's strange how quiet feels after gunfire. The world doesn't rush back all at once, it creeps, slow as dawn after a long winter. For days after Sweetwater, I caught myself listening for hoofbeats that never came. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the part of me that didn't trust peace to last. Out here, peace is just the space between storms. Ayanna stayed on at the cabin. At first, I told myself it was for her safety. The men who'd ridden with Pike still had friends, and friends out here could be more dangerous than enemies. But the truth sat heavier. I didn't want her to leave. The place felt different with her in it, quieter, but alive, like the house had found a heartbeat again. We fell into a rhythm that made no promises but asked for none either. She cooked in the mornings, using what she found in the hills, roots, berries, things I'd ridden past 100 times without seeing. I worked the fences, checked the creek for traps, tended Bramble's new colt. At night we'd sit by the fire, talking when words were needed, silent when they weren't. I learned small things first, the way she liked her tea strong enough to bite back, the way she could read the weather by how high the hawks flew, how her hands trembled only when she was angry, never when she was afraid. She learned things about me I hadn't said out loud in years, that I once had a brother buried back east, that I'd fought in a war I no longer believed in, that some nights I still woke hearing horses scream in smoke. Sometimes she'd look at me then, and I'd see a kind of sorrow that wasn't pity. It was recognition, the kind only the broken offer each other. One evening, about a week after the trial, the wind came warm out of the south, carrying the smell of rain and mesquite. I was oiling my rifle on the porch when Ayana stepped outside. She was barefoot, wearing one of my old shirts belted at the waist. The fire behind her threw her shadow long across the boards. She leaned on the post beside me, eyes on the horizon where thunderclouds were gathering like dark cattle. "Storm coming," she said. I nodded. "Spring always brings one." "Good," she said softly. "The land needs it. So did we, maybe." She stayed quiet for a while, then said, "In my mother's tongue, there's a word, nawa. It means the time when wounds turn to scars. It's not healing. Healing means something was broken and made whole again. This means learning to live with what stays." I thought about that. Seems to me scars are proof we survived. She looked at me, a small smile playing on her lips. Or proof we had something worth surviving. The wind lifted her hair then, and for a moment, everything around us, the hills, the creek, the thunder rolling closer, seemed to stop just to listen. That's when I realized the sound of her voice had started to replace the silence I used to chase. Rain hit before dark. Hard rain, the kind that makes the roof talk. I pulled the horses under shelter, came back soaked through, and found her tending the fire. She handed me a blanket, wordless. The smell of wet leather and wood smoke filled the room. She sat across from me, the firelight painting her skin gold, her eyes darker than the night outside. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. "Miss what?" "The life before all this," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the cabin, the wilderness, the quiet. I thought about Boston, about cities where the air was heavy with coal and regret. I thought about men in uniforms, shouting orders no one believed in. I thought about my brother's grave. "No," I said finally. "That life ended before I walked away from it." She nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "Some people die and keep walking," she said. "You were one of them." "Was," I corrected gently. "Not sure I still am." Her gaze lingered on me a moment too long. "Maybe not," she said softly. "Maybe now you're breathing again." The rain grew louder, drumming against the roof like hooves on hard ground. The wind whistled through the cracks, and she moved closer to the fire. I tossed another log on, sparks jumping between us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "In my tribe, we don't have a word for love like yours does. We have words for respect, for balance, for seeing another person as part of the same breath. That's what it means to be seen and not own." I met her eyes. "Maybe that's the only kind worth keeping." She held my gaze, steady and unflinching. "And do you keep it, Elias Cooper?" Her question cut through me like the rain through the roof. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I didn't know. Instead, I said the only thing that felt true. "I try." That seemed enough for her. She rose, slow and graceful, and came to sit beside me. The firelight caught the rope scar around her neck, healed now but still raw against her skin. Without thinking, I reached out, brushed it lightly with my thumb. She didn't pull away. Instead, she lifted her chin, letting me see the full mark, the proof of her survival. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Only when I forget what it means." "What does it mean?" "That I'm still here," she said simply. Her hand found mine then, not soft, not shy, but sure. The world outside roared, thunder shaking the windows, but in that small cabin, the air was steady. Her fingers fit against mine like something the wind had carved just for that moment. We stayed that way a long while, the fire burning low. The rain softened, turned to a hush, then to silence. When I finally stood, the storm had passed, leaving the smell of wet earth and renewal behind it. "You should rest," I said. She looked up at me, eyes glinting with the kind of quiet that hides storms of its own. "Will you?" she asked. "Trying,"